All right, good evening and welcome to the January 6, 2026 meeting of the Hickory City Council, the first meeting of this year. We want to welcome all of you here. At this time, I would like to ask our good friend, the Reverend Antonio Logan from Friendship Baptist Church, to the podium for our invocation. I would ask that if you're able to please stand for the invocation and remain standing after the invocation for the Pledge of Allegiance. Reverend Logan, we appreciate you being here with us this evening.
Glad to have you. Let us pray. Oh God, we thank you for being God all by yourself. We thank you for this brand new year. You brought us from 25 to 26. Oh, and reminded of the scripture that says, Philippians 1 and 6, being confident of this very thing, that he which hath begun a good work in you will perform it, will continue it until the day of Jesus Christ. And we realize there's some unfinished business that must be done, but Lord, we thank you for this new year, new opportunity, new energy, new breath of God breathing upon us. We thank you for each city council person that makes up this great city council. Thank you for Hickory, North Carolina, that you will continue to bless it, to advance it, that it'll be a place that all people want to come. They can't pass by. They want to come and stay because of the good energy, the good love, the good harmony and unity to all people. Continue to bless, and I bless the rest of this meeting, that it be for your good, for our good, but for your glory. We give you thanks in advance. It's in Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I feel like I've already been to church. All right. We have two special presentations this evening. To introduce our first presentation, I'll call on our Parks, Recreation, and Sports Tourism Director, Mr. Mark Seaman. And also, I think that they're going to join him is the Hickory Tennis Association Chairman, Alan Finley, and past board chair, Hanny Nassar. So I don't know, Mark, are you going to kick it off? All right.
Yes, sir, Mayor. I appreciate it. Mayor, members of City Council, Mr. Wood, Mr. Swanson, thank you for allowing me to be the first one to speak in 2026. I appreciate that.
We planned that.
We actually appreciate the chance to put the spotlight on an outstanding volunteer member organization that is doing great things in our community. The Greater Hickory Tennis Association, GHTA, is governed by a 19-member board, all whom collectively donate thousands of hours of volunteer time each year to promote the game of tennis. Nationally, tennis continues to grow. There are now more than 25 million tennis players in the United States, and participation has increased by 8% over the last year. GHTA plays a major role in supporting the growth locally. Much of their work happens behind the scenes, not only promoting the sport, but also helping ensure that Hickory's tennis facilities remain amongst the best in the area. Through their donation of time, expertise, and resources, GHTA has been a strong partner with the City of Hickory in maintaining and improving our tennis courts. As pickleball participation has grown nationwide, many communities have faced challenges balancing the use of shared tennis and pickleball facilities. GHTA has been proactive and collaborative in this area. When the city last resurfaced the courts, GHTA recommended converting the Westmont tennis courts and one tennis court at Taft Broom Park into pickleball courts, helping reduce conflicts and better serve both user groups. Currently, there's 13 dedicated tennis courts and 13 designated pickleball courts in the city. GHTA is a great example of how volunteer organizations can work alongside the city to meet evolving recreational needs. Due to these things and many more, I'm proud to share that in 2025, GHTA was named Member Organization of the Year by the North Carolina Tennis Association. And it's my pleasure to invite the two individuals that the mayor mentioned, Alan and Hanny, to come up here and talk about some of the great things GHTA does.
All right.
Thanks, Mark, and good evening, Mayor, council persons. I can't do what Dr. Tony did with my voice, but I'll give it my best shot. Hi, I'm Alan Finley, and I'm this year's president and last year's president of the GHTA. And of course, this is Hanny Nassar that's going to follow me. He's the past president for many years and incoming secretary. And I just really wanted to start by thanking our actually 21-member team, our board. We have 2 ex officio members as well. But especially want to thank Bill Hall, who's here, Hanny, Donna Barger, Dwayne Mozingo, and Steve White. We have a big team of volunteers throughout the community. They do a ton of work. And just a couple of highlights just for 1 minute. Again, we have really strong board participation and a big volunteer community. We're heavily committed to growing and fostering tennis in our community, and we also continue to support existing players, not just trying to foster new players. And we consistently introduce new folks to this healthy sport. I don't know if you've read this, but the USTA came up with a study a couple of years ago that has proven that if you play tennis 2 or more times a month and you're 35 years of age or older, you can live an extra 9 years. So it's a really healthy sport that we should all get involved in. So that's one reason we push it so much. A few more things. We hosted a 40 and over age group state tournament last year. 900 players were in Hickory, which is a huge economic impact, as we all know. We run a really large juniors have run large juniors tournaments every year that sometimes have over 100 registrants, lots of little kids. It's great. And we just finished creating our very first tennis scholarship for 2 Hickory high school seniors at $1,500 each per year, 1 male, 1 female. We're going to continue that after this year. And we have a newly updated website, newsletter, and brochure. And lastly, we have a long-range planning committee that is working on plans for 2 more courts at Hickory City Park. So fingers crossed, hopefully we'll be working with you guys on that. Hanny, you can take it from here. Thank you.
Thank you, Alan.
Thank you.
Mayor, City Council members, Ms. Swanson, Mr. Wood. So just to complete the topic of us being a member organization, we did a few things that were not mentioned, and one was mentioned. We are one of the first inaugural advocacy specialists in the nation, which means we have a grassroots activity to grow tennis in the community as well as in the nation. So I'm on the USTA North Carolina Tennis Board, and our goal is to grow tennis up to 35 million by 2035. So there's a lot of grassroots activity in this area. As Mark mentioned, we have successfully segregated tennis courts and pickleball, which is a major issue with pickleball players in the nation. This is something that we are proud of, to be able to segregate. Now we have no tennis courts with pickleball lines, which is probably the only area in the nation that can say that. We are also the only community tennis association that's financially and voluntarily, we volunteer and we support the Winston-Salem Open, which is every August in Winston-Salem, which is an ATP Association of Tennis Professionals tournament that we support, again, financially and through volunteers. We are what we call school partners. So we have about 25 schools, middle schools and elementary schools in Iredell County as well as in Caldwell County that we support in tennis. We go and we introduce the game of tennis to the young elementary and middle school students, and the coaches take over from there. But we have not been able to penetrate Catawba yet, so maybe, but Caldwell and Iredell have been very eager to do that, and we have been doing it as a GHTA. We are also one of the first CTAs, the Community Tennis Association, to introduce red ball tennis. Red ball tennis is red balls. There are different balls that we use with juniors and adults, red ball being one of the first balls, which is 25% pressurized, so it's for juniors. So we are introducing red ball, which uses this part of the tennis court. And in a sense, it is a competitor to pickleball. So we were the first ones to introduce it in the nation. And we provide coaching to individuals with intellectual disabilities. So we are certified, we have certified coaches that do that. And we are part of the Association of Tennis in Abilities Tennis in North Carolina, and they do wheelchair tennis, they do blind and vision impaired tennis, and they do, the blind and vision impaired is kind of interesting because they open the ball, they put jingles in it, and then the jingles will cue the players to know where the ball is, and they allow 3 different bounces for the ball before it's hit. And then also the last one is the amputee tennis, or individuals with prosthetics. So these are all a combination of things that helped us become a member organization of the year. And as Alan mentioned, with Mark being on board, this is also one of the few CTAs that we have Parks and Rec represented on our board. And one other person is Sam Clark, who's the Lenore Ryan tennis coach of men and women. So he's also one of the members of the board. So thank you very much for allowing us to be here and for giving us the opportunity to work with Parks and Rec to become one of the premier tennis organizations in North Carolina.
All right. Well, thank you, Hanny and Alan and Mark, for your leadership with the Greater Hickory Tennis Association and the partnership that we have with the city. And we appreciate the economic development and all that it brings to our city. And I know the recreation, I didn't know that you could add 9 years to your life. That's the first time I've heard that one, but I'm sorry? 9.1. Okay. Well, that's even better. But we appreciate all that you do in our community associated with, not only associated with tennis, but with other things as well. So thank you very much.
Congratulations.
Yes. All right. Next up, I'll let our city manager, Mr. Warren Wood, introduce our next presentation.
Well, you all know a big issue has been interbasin transfers along the Catawba River for us, and the most recent one with the city of Charlotte and what they're pursuing. So that's something we're opposing as a region and along the Catawba, the chain of lakes. So with that, I'm going to have Anthony Starr, the Executive Director of the Western Piedmont Council of Governments, come up and do a presentation. He's going around different jurisdictions in the region to do this presentation to give everybody an update.
Okay. Thank you, Warren. Mayor and Council, thanks for having me. It's always a pleasure to join you, and appreciate the partnership with the Western Piedmont COG. Appreciate Ms. Patton serving as our past chair of the board and part of our leadership in the regions. Appreciate you. And let me just dive right in on the interbasin transfer, or IBTs as we call it. So, and why this is important, I'll talk a little bit about what IBTs are, the Catawba River Basin, Charlotte Water's request, some of the alternatives, our coalition, and the legislative study. So for the benefit of the public, let me back up and just say, what is an IBT, or interbasin transfer? It's when a utility removes water from one river basin, in this case, the Catawba River Basin, and transfers it to another through discharging through its wastewater process into another river basin. In this case, Charlotte discharging it into the Rocky River, Yadkin River Basin. So it does not count when you're calculating how much they're transferring the water that is returned from their wastewater treatment process. It only counts if they withdraw it and then don't return it. So what do the experts say about these IBTs? Well, lots of academic research out there that says they have both environmental and economic negative impacts on the source basins, such as the Catawba River. And so that is what is of concern to us, and I'll get into that a little bit more. Charlotte Water currently has a 33 million gallons per day IBT certificate issued in 2002. Concord Kannapolis has a 20 million gallon per day certificate, of which 10 million comes from the Catawba, another from the Yadkin Basin, and then the town of Mooresville also transfers 9.5 million. A little bit about the basin.
Anthony, and those don't expire, is that correct?
They do not expire under current law, that's right. They have to, if they seek to increase it, they have to get permission again to increase it. So how the state divides up the basins, there are sub-basins, and you can see here the various river basins in North Carolina by the colors. I would note that the Catawba River Basin is actually one of the smaller river basins geography-wise in the state. But a little bit about the Catawba River. It was the first river in the United States completely planned and developed for electricity production. It started in the early 20th century and was completed when Lake Norman was constructed in 1963. About 1,800 miles of shoreline. Duke Energy uses it to create about 20% of its energy in the state, as well for its customers. It's the most densely populated river basin in North Carolina. And it also serves about 2 million people through 18 different public water systems. But at the end of the day, what we have to understand is the Catawba River is a threatened river. Twice in the last 20 years, it has been labeled as the most endangered river in America primarily because of unprecedented demand for clean water with the exponential growth in Charlotte. And so that threatens the supply of the river and has other impacts on it as well. Now to that threat and that part of that problem comes into it is drought conditions. And so what this graph shows you is from the U.S. Drought Monitor, and it shows from 1998 to last year, drought conditions in North Carolina. And the way to read this chart is the higher the bars are on the chart, the greater percentage of North Carolina was in drought classification. And the darker the colors, the more severe the drought. So you'll point there, you see in 1998 to 2012 drought was really severe, as well the 07 to 09 drought. And why that comes into play is for our rivers and our lakes in terms of water supply. This is a diagram our engineers created. You can see the water treatment plant. The blue line there at the top represents normal elevation for our lakes. The red line you see below it is the intake for the water system. And so the closer during drought conditions the water gets to that red line, the more endangered our water supply becomes. And so the water has to stay a certain amount above our intakes in order for our water systems to operate. Now, in the 98-2002 drought, that was the largest deficit of rainfall on record in North Carolina. In the Western Piedmont, the way to read that map is basically those are river stream flow measurements, but the pink area in the Western Piedmont was the most affected in North Carolina. So we were the epicenter of that drought. And then again in 2007, 2009, which was the most severe drought in recorded history for North Carolina. And at that time, Hickory was putting out press releases to try to reduce water consumption by 20%. And water levels dropped by 8 to 10 feet below normal during that time. And also on Lake Norman, the level of that lake dropped to just 3.1 feet above the cooling intake for a nuclear power plant. That's kind of important. Meanwhile, Charlotte continues to pull water from the Catawba River and loses about 19% of every gallon it takes out of the river through leaks in its system. It's called water loss. That equates to about 23 million gallons per day. So they lose more water each day than Hickory produces on average. Now, consider also that Charlotte might say, well, IBTs are part of the normal process. It's part of business. It's what we have to do. It's no big deal. Well, Charlotte Water and its water conservation goals, like many of our systems, are during severe or extreme droughts are 10 to 20% reduction in use of water. And they use about 125 million gallons per day. That results in about a conservation goal of 12.5 to 25 million gallons per day. The potential Charlotte Water IBT is 63 million gallons per day. So Charlotte is proposing to transfer 2.5 to 5 times more water than it hopes to conserve during extreme droughts. So either this IBT is a big deal, it is significant, or their water conservation targets are not adequate. So about Charlotte Water's request. So they currently, as I mentioned, have a permission to withdraw up to 33 million gallons per day. That was originally approved and intended to go to 2030. They're approaching that limit, so now they're anticipating asking for up to 63 million gallons per day to transfer from the Catawba River. And the way that works, if you look at the map on the right there, that is Mecklenburg County. The 2 red dots is where they withdraw the water from Mountain Island Lake and Lake Norman, and they treat the water at the blue squares at the treatment facilities. And then that ridge line is the purple line on the right side of the map that drains to the Yadkin and Rocky River Basin. And they want to transfer the water over into that eastern third of Mecklenburg County. Conservatively, if you take the 30 million gallons per day, what that equates to is about 300,000 extra people in the eastern third of Mecklenburg County is what they're planning. Now that's driven by a lot of growth. There you can see the growth rates in and around especially on the east side of Charlotte and adjoining counties. It's basically going to take away our opportunity to grow in western North Carolina if they continue to transfer water out of the basin. Now, Hickory belongs to a group called the Catawba Water Management Group, and that is a group of utilities up and down the river chain in North and South Carolina that cooperate together to plan and managed the Catawba River system. And it produced a water supply plan in 2014 that is, they're nearly finished with an update. But in that plan, it cited research that showed by mid-century, the safe yield for many of our basins and reservoirs, many of the Catawba River Basin's reservoirs would be exhausted by the year 2050. Well, I can tell you that that will make population economic growth unsustainable when that happens, right? The safe yield deals with how much water do we have, that difference between normal operation and drought conditions, right? And so that's going to start impacting our ability to get permits for our own growth. And never mind, and this study was done in 2014, Charlotte's growing at faster rates than that study assumed. So I think that day will come sooner than 2050. Keep in mind, at the same time, our research shows that we looked at the water flows of the Catawba River going back to the 1960s, and what it shows essentially is that the flow of the Catawba River, we're transferring more and more water out of it into other basins. At the same time, the flow of the river is decreasing. So it's not even staying level amounts. And so that results in less water, means higher pollutant concentrations, which drives up the treatment cost of all of our utility systems. So the more we transfer out, the more it contributes to that problem as well. Now, Charlotte's water rates are another thing that we've looked at, and Charlotte has more affordable, their water rates are more affordable as a percentage of median household income than 90% of other utilities in North Carolina. And they pay less for the same amount of water. At the same time, Charlotte loses about 19% of its water that it treats annually. And that map, the chart on the right side shows the black dot is the median affordability for water systems in North Carolina. The blue dot represents all of them in our region, and then you see Charlotte in the orange dot on the left. But basically the IBT means cheaper water for Charlotte and more expensive water for everyone else in the river basin. And our concern about legally is the precedents that continue, and this keeps happening more and more, and we're going to exhaust our supplies with that. Charlotte has to look at the alternatives in their process, and they've done that. They did it even back in 2001. And so there's two primary options they have to reduce or eliminate their IBT. One is to take water from the Yadkin River, either by purchasing it from existing utility systems or construct their own treatment facility. And another option is to return the water back to the Catawba River Basin through the wastewater discharge process. Those are both the options. Charlotte looked at the cost of those options back in 2001, and they said the cost back then for those options were $16 million or $82 million. And now they're saying those costs are both over $800 million each to do either one. And that seems like a really large number, and it represents a 10 to 50 times increase in inflation for those projects. And we're not necessarily accepting those cost estimates at this point, but even if you did, for the argument's sake right now, consider that Charlotte has about a $651 million annual budget for its utility system. And it plans about $2.3 billion in projects over the next 5 years. So when you look at that means that avoiding an IBT for Charlotte only requires about a 12% increase in their capital budget over the next 15 years. So we think that's a reasonable step to take and is not cost prohibitive for them when you look at the scale of their current operations. So they are looking, meanwhile, talking about the cost, they've not invested in alternative water source projects in this century. Their leaders have backed a sales tax increase for transit infrastructure. They received $141 million in pandemic funding that could have been used for infrastructure as well, that they used for other purposes. Bottom line, though, is Charlotte pays less for water. Charlotte received federal funds for water infrastructure, but didn't use it for that purpose. And they support a tax increase for other non-water infrastructure. They have the means, just not the desire to do the right thing and pursue the alternatives for the IBT. So as a result, in response to this, we formed a coalition of local governments, and our local governments in our region for the Western Piedmont COG asked us to facilitate and coordinate these efforts. It also includes McDowell County, in addition to our 4 counties of Alexander, Burke, Caldwell, and Catawba, and the municipalities. At some point, there will be a public hearing that the Environmental Management Commission will hold on the environmental impact statement from Charlotte Water when they produce that, and that will be the process that they use to determine whether they grant their request to expand and increase their IBT. Some key points our coalition is putting out on this front would be is that our region's future growth could be limited because of these large IBTs. If we exhaust the supply, at some point, federal, state regulatory agencies are going to start telling Hickory and other local governments, you cannot increase your treatment permit anymore because the river system won't support it. We would also say we're not opposed to Charlotte growing. We just don't want that growth to occur at our expense. And the limited resources of the Catawba River should not be used to subsidize growth outside the river basin. And Charlotte needs to implement the policies and the infrastructure to avoid these IBTs. And then lastly, IBTs, as I've said before, could make the impacts of severe droughts much worse for our communities along the Catawba River. So last year we were successful in getting legislation passed, House Bill H 850, that put a moratorium in place on large IBTs over 15 million gallons, and so that applies to Charlotte. At the same time, it directed that the UNC Collaboratory at UNC Chapel Hill to study the issue and provide recommendations. They have to look at the statutory process in that study on the approval of these IBTs, as well as provide their own recommendations. There are a couple of really key things that we're advocating for with the UNC Collaboratory. One is imposing a shot clock, since we're in basketball season now, on large IBTs, and that means such that you can institute IBT, but you have maybe a 15 or 20-year limit on how long it can operate and transfer the water, and that gives you time to build the necessary infrastructure to eliminate your IBT. And the second thing that we want them to consider is a drought mitigation fund for impacted communities. So if Charlotte gets an approved of an IBT in the future or some other entity, they have to set aside a certain amount of funding each year for other communities that are impacted by that IBT to use to become more drought resilient. Maybe that's lowering an intake on the reservoir, maybe it's providing an interconnection between utility systems, but those are the options we want them to consider. So what are we asking our coalition members to do, and the public, is to respectfully engage your state legislators to talk about these key points. We'll provide information along the way to you to do that. And we'll also want Hickory and other local governments to engage with the UNC Collaboratory to share your local perspective. We'll be sending some information to you on that front in the coming weeks. But at the end, the next 50 years of growth in our region will be determined by this issue. It really can't be overstated. And so we need to use every opportunity to keep this issue at the forefront of people's minds. So I'll stop there and be glad to answer any questions you have.
I have one. What would it take for them to pump or get back the water into our basin if it's granted? Is it on the table that they, over the 10 or 15 years, they have to have the ability to get the water back into our basin, and how would that mechanism work?
Right, so there's ways you could go about that. They could build it immediately and finance it, or use their savings, or they could be required to set the funds aside to do that in some period of time. But they would, they could, to your point, they could pump their discharge water from the wastewater treatment plant back into a stream that feeds into the Catawba River, and so that would eliminate the IBT or greatly reduce it.
But it would be at a cost, which they're saying is...
Yes, they're saying it's currently over $800 million. We're not, they haven't released their environmental impact statement yet, so we don't know any details on what that looks like. And once they do, our engineering team will be taking a look at that to see what assumptions they made and whether we agree with those assumptions.
Thank you.
Anthony, I want to say thank you so very much for certainly being one in our community that is certainly ahead of this, and the extensive research and study that you continue on doing on the IBT. I think someone might be able to say it more nicer than I can, but I do believe that the last IBT meeting that I attended was here in Hickory at the Ridgeview Library.
Yes, sir.
And one of my questions was basically just reiterating what they were presenting to us, which was they want to take water out of our Catawba River and not put it back, which is the cheapest way.
Right.
And then now in your study, you also revealed that there is, 23 million gallons that is being leaked because it's not being repaired. I would love to know what is their stance on that. And before you answer that, then you're telling me that they have a financial budget that can certainly pay for what they need, but rather they want to take the cheapest way out. Someone can say it nicer, but it sounds like they're a bunch of thieves. I know somebody else don't want to use that terminology, probably want to be more, politically correct, but that's what it sounds like to me, and so I would love to hear your comment on that.
The average for water loss is more in the 14% or so range for utility systems, and so they're well above that. That was one of the things that ideas that we put forward to the legislature, was to require that if you're going to get an IBT, your water loss percentage needs to be down at an acceptable rate. Don't ask to transfer water out when you're bleeding too much water into the ground. And so that's what we're looking at. The cost, they certainly, as I highlighted the budget, they have the financial ability to do the right thing here, but they want to choose the cheaper option. I think you asked me a question about what they said, and remind me again.
About, the 23 gallons or million.
Yeah, what did they say about that? Well, they've just acknowledged what the water loss percentage is, according to their deputy director, and I was in meeting with some time back, but they've not put any information or details out. And frankly, that's been a frustrating part of this process, is that Charlotte Water has engaged with the public a great deal on this front and put very few details out there, and it leaves a lot of questions for people. And I have to believe that they know the answers to a lot of the questions that are floating out there, but they've just not put information out yet.
I had a question. So we're in this moratorium and a study's being done. What are the next steps? Will a decision be made by the panel that will be all or nothing, or will there be stipulations that come out of these recommendations, things we're talking about, alternatives?
Yeah, good question. So the moratorium is in place until March of 27, according to the law that was passed. The study is due to be complete by January of next year. And so at that point, the General Assembly will take into consideration the recommendations of that study, and that's when our efforts will be really focused on advocating for what we think is in the best interest of the entire river basin and not just Charlotte's interest. And frankly, this is a statewide issue. There are fights like this happening in other parts of the state as well.
But it's DEQ that, the way it's established right now, is the decision maker.
Yeah, the Environmental Management Commission,
Yeah.
which is housed in DEQ.
Yeah.
It doesn't act, the Environmental Management Commission is an appointed body. It doesn't answer to the Secretary of DEQ, but it is housed with there and staffed by DEQ for sure.
So unless the legislature inserts itself, then it's a bureaucratic, to some degree, decision.
Right, and they have to have some hearings and everything, but the guardrails for issuing these IBTs are pretty broad. And so we'd like to narrow that more so that the circumstances are more limited when it's appropriate.
They narrowed the guardrails last time we fought this, but not nearly where they need to be.
I want to build on what Anthony brought up. I think this is a situation where, the leaders in Charlotte are, like electricity, they're taking the path of least resistance. And, that's, I know how hard that can be to face these kind of issues, because we're doing it now. I mean, we're planning for 2050, and, it's being misinterpreted and things like that, what we're trying to do. But it's a tough sell, but I think that's where they're trying to go with this. But I do have 3 questions. When you're determining whether an IBT is allowed, is the entire basin from headwaters to wherever the ocean, I guess, is that what's considered, or is it segmented? Do they take it in segments?
So that's a really good question, Mr. Wood. As I understand the process now, it basically hinges on the environmental impact statement that the applicant produces, in this case Charlotte, and the EMC has to determine whether or not it was comprehensive enough and considered all the factors. And that's the point of the hearing, is for other stakeholders to point out their study didn't look at enough options or consider enough communities or all the impacts. And so there's not a lot of like really, finite regulations on the scope of such studies.
Okay. That leads to my second question is that are people downstream from Charlotte on the basin forming coalitions like we are above Charlotte? Are you seeing the same kind of opposition? Because it affects them too if we're considering the entire basin.
Yeah. So folks in South Carolina are very concerned. I've spoken with a number of folks there. They are not part of our coalition. Frankly, that's a different legal process. If you remember, constitutional law says when one state sues another state, it goes straight to the Supreme Court. So I think if North Carolina approves this IBT, there's a good chance that South Carolina could sue North Carolina again, and this issue will find itself in front of the Supreme Court again.
And the Catawba Water Remanagement Group includes folks from South Carolina.
Okay.
It turns into the Wateree when it reaches.
So municipalities are forming coalitions to oppose this as well downstream from Charlotte?
I don't know if they went that far to say they formed a coalition, but they are definitely engaged in watching the issue.
My last question, is the Catawba River Basin a recipient of any significant interbasin transfers?
I don't think so.
Okay. Thank you.
Not at least in North Carolina.
Okay. Thank you.
And really, the tactics that they're using is that they're kind of shooting for, sun and the stars, but knowing they might not get all that, but they might get half. That's the tactic that they're using.
Yeah, that very well may be. We don't know because Charlotte has not been very forthcoming in its intentions and details.
What does it do to the other river basins when they transfer more water in there than it's used to be? That's going to create more problems too?
There are some environmental impacts that it can cause for the receiving basin. I can't speak to the technical aspects of that, but I'm been made aware that there are potential negative impacts sometimes for receiving basins as well.
Is there any cost associated with doing an IBT other than just getting permission?
So Charlotte incurs cost in terms of its the engineering it does to apply for this and whatever legal factors, I guess.
Really the cheapest
But
way
in their calculation, I'm sure they're thinking that cost is cheaper than it is to build the necessary infrastructure to avoid the IBT.
But if they would build the infrastructure, just as Mr. Wood said, we've already said we're investing for 25, 30 years out. If they would do it, then it wouldn't be a fight because we would get back that water.
Right.
And it seems that would benefit everyone and certainly would benefit us if they would do the right thing.
Yes.
Right, but a thief doesn't want to pay you back from what they
What they steal from you. That's right.
Anthony, what's the timeline on requesting an IBT? Does it have to be an immediate, and I don't know what immediate might mean, I don't know the definition of that, but what's the time frame of needing the water before you can apply? Do you know that?
I think that's more of a function of the regulation in terms of they've got a limit of 33 million gallons per day and they can't exceed that limit, so they're applying before they reach that limit. Under North Carolina law, once you exceed, I think it is 2 million gallons per day, you then have to apply for a permit. If you're under 2 million gallons per day, you don't have to get a permit to transfer water across a river basin. You can think of like, it just wouldn't make sense to build a water treatment plant if you're moving 200,000 gallons across a ridge line, for example.
Well, and this is going to be a question for Mr. Wood. What prevents us from requesting a treatment permit for X millions of gallons in preparation for 2050 since we're already preparing for the capital investment of that? Could we get that done before this IBT happens? That's not the answer I want.
Well, and to put the numbers in perspective, so they've got a 33 million gallon a day IBT. They're asking for another 30. That's 63 million. Don't forget Concord's got their 10 million. So that's 73 million. We got a 32 million gallon a day plant doing 15 million. Every drop that comes out of the Catawba that goes into another river basin hurts our ability to get additional capacity withdrawal out of the river eventually, out of the lake eventually, which is, we know that's going to happen. It's just, we're not there now, but we know in 25 years we're going to be there, and that's what we're planning for. But it may prohibit our ability to get everything we need.
And that's our concern, is that at some point, these IVTs add up and Hickory or one of our other communities gets denied its application to expand its water treatment plant because a regulatory agency says Charlotte's already transferring too much water out, we can't allow any more permits.
And we talked about it where, you know, your question about the capacity and why they're asking for this. It's for their future growth and their development. And so they could curtail some of it to accommodate their current water needs or even just a little more, but they're really looking at pulling from others so they can grow and depleting us.
Well, it scares me that we're sitting here planning for 2050 and we could be saving money for a plant that we can't utilize because we can't get the water out.
Back in 1998.
That's concerning.
Yeah, they should have been planning for 2020.
Okay, well, thank you so much.
Yeah, Anthony, your knowledge in this and has grown, I can tell, since the beginning, and we really appreciate your leadership and the COG and everybody that's involved, because obviously this is going to be a process that we're not going to have any results or answers to anytime soon. So we greatly appreciate your in-depth knowledge and bringing us up to speed on everything and continuing to work with us and partnering with us, not only with us, but with the other municipalities that this affects as well. So I don't expect any answers on this anytime soon, but we do greatly appreciate the knowledge that you have pertaining to this and the partnership.
Thanks for the partnership and support on it.
Yes, sir. All right, as we'll do in every council meeting, we allow an opportunity for anyone present in the audience that would like to address the council, and it's become that time for the meeting. So at this time, I'll ask if there's anyone present that would like to address our council, and if so, we just ask that you approach the podium, that you state your name and address, and that you limit your conversation to 3 minutes or less. So at this time, I'll ask, is there anyone present that would like to address the council this evening? All right, there doesn't appear to be anyone that would like to address the council this evening. Before we move on to the next item of our approval of our minutes, I will note that Councilwoman Arnita Dula is under the weather tonight, and she was unable to be here with us. So at this time, I'll ask for the regular meeting of December 16th if we have a motion.
So
Move
moved.
approval.
Okay, we have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, like sign? That carries unanimously. All right, next item on the agenda is item number 7, our reaffirmation ratification on second readings, and once again, I'll entertain a motion.
So moved.
Second?
All right, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, like sign? That also carries unanimously. Item number 8 is our consent agenda. I'll ask if there's any member of staff or council that would like to have any items removed from the consent agenda this evening.
Move approval of the consent agenda.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, like sign? That consent agenda carries unanimously. All right, I don't believe we have any public hearings or any departmental reports this evening. Is that correct?
Correct.
All right. Do we have any appointments to our boards and commissions?
Yes, I do have one. I'd like to appoint Brenda Ramsor to the Community Relations Council.
Okay. We have one nomination. Are there any others? All right. We have a motion, and I'll second that. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, like sign? All right, that carries unanimously as well. All right, any matters not on the agenda, sir?
Yes, sir.
Okay, general comments, I have just one. I think the news release went out today.
You're going to beat me to it, so go ahead.
Okay, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
No, you do it. You go ahead.
Well, so yeah, Rick Beasley, after decades of service to multiple jurisdictions in Appalachian State, is announced, and he's with the city since 2018, so working on 9 years. So he's announced his retirement. His wife begged me to rescind that retirement paperwork. No, I'm kidding. But no, we appreciate Rick's, the things that he has done and accomplished here. He's got 2 more months with us. But
One of them's a short month.
The city walk out here more than likely would not have happened without him and the work that he and some others did on that. But a lot of the contacts he was able to make. But that project was in jeopardy early on, but Rick did his magic. Which
He literally got it back on track.
He did get it back on. That's just one example. He's done a lot of great things, and he makes everybody around him better. He's just he never met a stranger, and we got him for 2 more months. He and Diana, his wife, are going to stay in Hickory, which is great. So we're fortunate to still have him. So thank you, Rick, and I'll thank you again before it's over with.
Well, we'll have many more opportunities to give him accolades between now and February 28th. Is that what it is?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I'm sure there'll be a lot more opportunities, but we're gonna miss his smiling face. All right. Other comments? Anybody?
I have one. I want to circle back to the GHTA. Years ago, back in the dark ages, when I was on Parks and Rec, I had the privilege of working with the GHTA when Hickory City Park looked a lot different than it does today. I don't know if, I'm sure everybody here remembers, but it was an eyesore at best. And working with them was just a fantastic experience, and what you've done out there is commendable. So thank you for everything you've done with that park, and thank you for being such good partners with the city.
I'll also like to lift up, I want to give a shout out to the staff, Mary Stein and Chaplain Stein over there at the Catawba Correctional Center. Yesterday, myself, the mayor, and Councilwoman Arnita was there for a very exceptional program that they're doing, and that's a corner of our community that we should never overlook. Those inmates are in a program that is called New Leash on Life. They're teamed up with shelter dogs, those dogs that are some who are almost close to being euthanized. But the inmates are learning how to train dogs, and we were at a graduation program on yesterday where these dogs were doing 20, 30 tricks, and they're all being trained by inmates to show them that they can have a second chance in life. And so I wanted to certainly give them a shout out and say, job well done.
They do that in a period of 6 weeks, and then once they train, and these dogs come in, and they're the one in particular that they demonstrated yesterday was deemed untrainable, and to see what that dog did yesterday in the demonstration was unbelievable, and obviously it serves more than that purpose. But then the dog gets with a different family, gets adopted, so they'll get a new dog. And 6 weeks do the same thing, but those dogs are on their way to their new family.
They come in as wild as they can be.
Oh, yeah.
And after about 6 months, they're fully trained and ready to be adopted. And so I certainly wanted to lift that program up.
Absolutely.
Wonderful.
What kind of treats did they use for those dogs?
I don't know, they didn't put it in my mouth.
Yeah. Yeah. But to see not only the difference in the animal, but the difference in the person. I mean, it was really touching. It really was. All right, anybody else? All right, I'll make a motion that we adjourn.
Second?
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All right, we stand adjourned. Thank you for being here. Yeah, I said 30 minutes. It was a little over.